Hello everyone, this is lecture 6 of module 1 in a series of lectures that I will be delivering to cover the software project management course at the Department of Software Engineering, Faculty of Computer and Information Technology, Jordan University of Science and Technology. In this lecture, I will address some of the software development methodologies that were supposed to be covered in the systems analysis and design course. However, as some of my students come from specializations that do not require the systems analysis and design, I wanted to provide this lecture to cover to provide the basics of software development methodologies. To start with, we look at the systems development life cycle, the SDLC. Well, the SDLC, it works for a range of hardware and software configurations. So a system can be composed of both hardware and software, or only software or only hardware. SDLC has 5 stages or phases, call them development phases. As you can tell here in the diagram, it starts with planning, moves to analysis, then design, then implementation, then maintenance. I should indicate here that software development methodologies, regardless how many phases they have, they work or they are used during the execution phase of the project management, while we develop the software, and we don't develop the software or the system unless we start the execution phase in our project management approach. Now, as far as the strengths and weaknesses of the SDLC methodology, let's start with the strengths. SDLC controls the entire development process. Very much it monitors the large projects. It's good for larger projects. And when we use SDLC, we go through the details. We can evaluate costs and the completion percentage of our targets using the SDLC. Documentation resulted from an SDLC approach will be very detailed. SDLC requires the user input to be well defined upfront, and it facilitates the ease of maintenance. So when we develop a system using the SDLC methodology, it will be easy on us to support and maintain that system, because everything is well defined. Also, it goes with development and design standards. Now, it accommodates or tolerates any changes in the staff during the project execution. As far as the weaknesses, well, it takes longer development time, because we cannot move from one phase or stage to the next or the following stage unless we have that stage perfected very much. The cost most likely is much higher than the cost and when we use other methodologies, as we will explain later on. The system must be defined and specified upfront. It is considered a rigid methodology. There's no flexibility in it. Also, it is hard to estimate the cost, because we are not sure how long it will take us to complete a stage. And the user input is sometimes limited. So we don't consult users from the beginning, for example, because the user input will help us when it comes to the acceptance test. The second methodology here is the joint application development, or JAD. What is JAD? It is a process used in the life cycle area of dynamic systems development. We collect requirements while developing a new information systems. So, in other words, the analyst would be looking or extracting the requirements from the RFB. The designer would be working over his shoulders to start his design or specifications. The developer would be looking at the shoulders of the designer and the analyst and would start development before they complete their job, and so on. So there would be like an overlap between the different members on the team. Also, they will help each other. So the developer will receive good support and help from the designer and from the analyst, same with the designer and so forth. So that will reduce the overall time, elapsed time of the project. JAD enhances the user participation because it encourages users to be involved in the project. The development process would be sped up, and the quality of the specifications would be improved because it is kind of iterative process. We do the thing and then we revisit that, etc., until we finalize the set of specifications. However, JAD is effective only in small and clearly focused projects, but it won't be that much effective in large and complex projects. In JAD, a workshop or a series of workshops will be required before starting the execution of the project. Now, the workshop, the key participants would be the executive sponsor, the decision maker, or the guy who derives the strategy, the planning, the directions, very much from the customer side. The subject matter experts. One thing that we need to mention here that with JAD, you need experts to be working with you. Otherwise, things will most likely will be messed up. While in the SDLC, the methodology that we explained in the previous slide, you can bring on board juniors because things are well defined there, and the junior would follow just predefined steps. Let's continue with the key participants. After the executive sponsor, we have the subject matter experts, as we said. There should be a facilitator or a session leader for the workshop, and there should be a documentation expert, and there should be observers, probably the rest of the team members. Still with JAD, what are the key steps? Well, let's read through them. The first step is to identify the project objectives, the limitations of the project, and the critical success factors of that project. Step 2, we need to define the project deliverables and the workshop activities schedule. We need to select the participants, which are the ones that will be involved in the project. We need to prepare a workshop material. We need to organize the workshop activities and the exercises. We need to educate the workshop participants, and after all, we need to coordinate the workshop logistics. As far as the advantages and the disadvantages or the challenges of the JAD, indeed, JAD would decrease the time and cost of the project in comparison to the SDLC that we explained earlier. JAD sessions help like bringing experts together and would give them the chance to exchange views, discuss things, learn from each other. The JAD implementation methods are well known these days. Also, another advantage of the JAD is JAD methods are easy to integrate with case tools. Now, as far as the challenges, there is a risk if the sessions, the workshop sessions are bad, then it's a matter of, it means we are wasting the time and the effort of our professionals. Also, if we don't give the participants the chance to express their opinions, to discuss things, then it's not going to work well for the project. The third methodology to cover here in this lecture is the rapid application development. What is the rapid application development? It's very much an alternative to the waterfall model of software development. Um, it means less emphasis on the planning. We don't spend too much time on the planning, while we pay more attention and more emphasis on the process itself. And RAD is very well good for developing software driven by user interface requirements. So it's a user-based development methodology. Examples of RAD tools: agile methods, spiral model, a graphical user interface, etc. And these will be covered in module 4, by the way. An example of the RAD methodologies is what we refer to as James Martin RAD method. It comes in 4 phases: requirements planning phase, user design phase, construction phase, and cutover phase. As far as the advantages of RAD, it provides, or it enables us to have better control on the system and better risk control through risk mitigation. Its disadvantages: first of all, it is a new approach, so we don't know all goods about it, we don't know all bads about it, so we need to be careful. It requires time of our resources. Also, it provides us with less control, and in most cases it leads to a poor design because it's like an ad hoc approach. And indeed, it will provide us with lack of scalability. Now let's compare the 3 methodologies with the open source prototyping and end user methodologies. Now in this table, we look at the 6 methodologies, and we compare them and the comparisons from the perspectives of control, time frame, users, MIS staff, transactions, decision support systems, interface, documentation and training, integrity and security, and reusability. I won't get into much details of the comparison. However, I will just put a few words on the open source, the prototyping, and the end user methodologies. The open source, it's like you go over the internet and you would find many sites that provide you with open source systems. Let's say you may find a school management system as an open source written using Java or using PHP. You would get a copy of that. You are allowed to get a copy of that open source system, then customize it, reformat some of its forms, etc., make the changes that you want, you need, add few things, few functions to it, remove some functions from it or deactivate them. So you end up with a system that is good for you. However, I need to just bring a few points here. When you start your development of your system based on an open source, then there are some restrictions. That system or the produced system at the end, you will be allowed to use it, for your own, but you cannot commercialize it. You cannot sell it to others. Also, the version that you reached at, you should make it available from the same site as an open source to other users as well. The prototyping, it's a way to keep the customer in your loop. For example, instead of waiting until the end of the system before you present it to the customer, every time you have a few options or a few components ready, you just ask the customer to give you the chance to present what you have in hands so far. So you show them what you did, so you give them some impression about the system, they see the system, they see the layout, and they may give you some feedback on that. However, that does not mean you would give it to them to use it as in the incremental and iterative project management approach. It is only to keep their attention with you, and you would be doing that every few weeks or every month or so. The end user approach or methodology, it is based on the user functions. So let's say the registration or admission and registration system. Who are the user categories? We have the students, we have the faculty, we have the administrative staff and the registration department. We have the director of the admission and registration department. Probably we have the deans, the chairmen of departments, the vice deans, etc., etc. So each of these categories, user categories, would have their own functional requirements. So we start the planning or the design of the system based on these requirements. Well, that's all for lecture 6, and I will be looking forward to meeting with you at lecture 7 of this module 1. Thank you.